GBNEWS then with former Liberal Democrat Minister Norman Baker and former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall. Morning to you both. Welcome back. Let's start with you, Norman, because Labour's idea to try and plug this big hole in the public finances is taxing companies more like Google and Amazon.
Well, I mean, they've got plenty of money and they're making huge fortunes, as indeed are some of the energy companies, and the non-DOMs he also refers to who don't pay taxes properly. So on the basis of what he said, that makes some sense. Now, interestingly, Jeremy Hunt has said he wants those with the broader shoulders to pay more as well. So we may find that some of these ideas are actually reflected in the budget on Thursday. The thing about Google and Amazon, of course, is they are international, multinational companies. It becomes quite difficult to tax them in this way. They just reorganize themselves and go somewhere else. You have to find a way to tax them for activities in this country that they cannot escape from. I have to say, it would have been easier to do it at the European Union level, but of course that's no longer an option for us.
Well, it's not a particularly conservative approach. I mean, you'd expect this from Labour, but I don't know if I can see this being adopted by the Conservatives, because of course if you make it unappealing for business in the UK, then ultimately your public services suffer in the end. They do, and these will be famous last words, that raising taxes is not particularly conservative, but it does look like that's going to happen on Thursday. I think that the government might be minded to look at something like the big companies, Amazon, Google, and look at what we can do with that taxation, but I don't think they'll be very keen to starting putting new taxes on, non-DOMs, and it's a really tricky area for Conservatives. It's a really tricky area in tax law as it stands. And as Norman has just said, you start going after these companies, they will just find a loophole and they will go elsewhere. So it's not particularly good for business in the country. If you think how much we all rely upon delivery companies, especially coming up to the festive time of year and what we did during the pandemic, it kind of cuts both ways. Yeah. I think we need to be mindful of that. I think that there needs to be a responsibility on those companies to offer to pay a bit more tax. They're not going to, but I'm not sure we need legislation for it.
I have to say, every interview we do with the Shadow Cabinet at the moment, they bring up the non-dom argument, and my reply is always just pointing to under Francois Hollande in France, when he went after non-dom, non-taxpayers, and they just upped sticks and all came to the UK. So is there a danger that that would happen if it was to be brought in here?
I would say so. I mean, these people have this status for a reason, and they'll just take their money elsewhere, and they will go. You're not going to get it if you keep going after them. I think there needs to be better ways of doing it.
Yeah, Norman?
Well, it's just a risk that they'll go elsewhere. So you have to design a system, I'm not saying it's easy, design a system whereby they can't take their money elsewhere, or if they do business in this country, you are able to nail them. Now, there are certain taxes which are very difficult to avoid. VAT, obviously, because you buy stuff in the shops, you can't avoid that. You can't really avoid council tax very easily. You probably can't avoid inheritance tax that easily either, although it's probably easier to do that. So you find a tax which is difficult to avoid, and non-DOMs are notoriously difficult to tie down, but nevertheless there is an equity issue here. There are people who are on quite low salaries are paying quite a lot of tax. Others who've got lots of money are not paying tax.
The top 1% of earners pay 25% of all taxes, though. I mean, that's a huge burden that they're already sharing.
Well, I mean, they've got plenty of money, a lot of people. I mean, and if you remember the Liz Truss, Karma Kwasi's budget, which is a disaster, what he was going to abolish the top rate of tax, 45p rate for those who are £125,000 or more. I mean, we saw how that went down with the public at large, and indeed went down with the Tory party as well. I mean, people want equity, they want fairness, and that clearly wasn't fair. Non-DOMs, in a way, not paying tax of any sort of magnitude is not fair either. So the challenge is, can we find a way to get some money out of them without having them leaving the country and going somewhere else?
Well, Labour would say, because they've been banging on about this non-dom policy for a while now, and they say it would raise at least £3 billion, and they're basing that on the University of Warwick study, which looked at the changes George Osborne made when he was Chancellor, and he effectively gave a 2-year notice period to non-DOMs, and HMRC introduced policies whereby they could change their tax affairs so they'd stay in the country, but they'd also end up paying less tax. So what I'm saying is the devil will be in the detail about how Labour would introduce this policy and how much notice they would give non-doms. Otherwise, it wouldn't raise much.
No, the devil is in the detail. That's exactly right. But the thing is, people like being in this country. It's a nice country to live in. I like my country, and others like coming here as well. So people will put up with a certain amount of extra payment to make for the basis they want to be here. If you push them too far, they'll leave the country. But they won't leave the country if there's a small increase, I don't think.
Yeah, interesting.
Should we talk about His Majesty? There's a beautiful photograph on lots of the front pages of the Daily Mail, actually by Chris Jackson, who we've interviewed in this programme before, Getty Royal Photographer, leaning against a tree in Windsor Park. But this came on the day. He made some rather sweeping changes to his deputies.
He did, and I think he's quite right to do so. So you've now changing the councillors of state who could stand in for the monarch should he be indisposed. And it was a limited pool of people, and it would normally, it's the first 4 adults in the line of succession, which I think we can all see is a little bit tricky when it has Prince Harry, has Prince Andrew, it has Princess Beatrice, who's not controversial but isn't a working royal. So I think he's right to put in Princess Anne. I think she works incredibly hard. I think it is only right that she takes that mantle up. I think it's been so appallingly wrong that she hasn't been able to do it because she's a woman. I think that's pretty appalling. She is so hardworking, and I'm pleased to see that the King has taken these decisions. He's pushed it through. And it's not a new thing. It's been around for a few weeks now that it was mooted around that he was going to do it. But I think if you are not a working royal, then you shouldn't have that privilege of being a councillor of state. It is quite as simple as that. And if you live in California, you aren't going to be here on hand to be of service should you be needed.
But will it be a red rag to a bull in the form of the Duchess of Sussex?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think all of the things that have been going on at the moment with television programmes and books, I think at the moment she will be wise to keep this one to herself. I don't think that she is that stupid that she would kick up a fuss. But, I'm happy to be corrected on that. I don't think so. I think that there is enough going on without her making a fuss over it. And I think that Prince Harry may well just go, calm down, we need to accept this and move on.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say that Claire's absolutely right. I totally agree with what she just said. But personally, I'm disappointed because, Prince Harry and Prince Andrew have been great sales agents for my royal book. They've been pushing it very hard.
Yeah, they're pushing a lot of things, including certain landmark TV series on streaming services. And he also made himself, his birthday present was, I'm going to be the new Ranger of Windsor Great Park.
Is that right?
Yeah, apparently so, yeah. So he's now, so if you see him around Windsor Great Park, say hello. Norman, front page of the Times.
Yes.
Xi and Biden give peace a chance.
Well,
there's a nice picture of them shaking hands.
Yes, and counting fingers afterwards, perhaps. I have to say that give peace a chance is a rather over-egging the pudding, I think, in this particular case. What's happening here is that if you look at the difference between the climate and the weather at the moment is being made by Russia, unpleasant weather. But the problem with the climate, if you like, is China in the longer term. And what President Biden has done, probably quite sensibly, is to try to detach China from Russia as far as he can in the short term. They've agreed, for example, that Russia shouldn't be threatening the use of nuclear weapons. So he's trying to get an agreement with the Chinese on all these matters and to isolate Putin. Diplomatically, that's right, but let's not forget that China itself is a pariah state under Xi Jinping. They've got effectively concentration camps going on for the Muslims in Xinjiang. They've basically eradicated any independence, and including religious independence for people in Tibet. It's a nasty government, the Chinese government. But you have to deal with these people because they are the second most powerful country in the world, and you can't not deal with them. And also Biden's got not just Russia to think about, but also he wants to make progress on climate change, and the Chinese have to be part of that. So I don't think he'll be, sending Xi warm Christmas cards. I might send him a Christmas card, but he won't be very warm.
Yeah,
a cold Christmas card.
A cold Christmas card.
Norman calls it over-egging the pudding, this headline about give peace a chance. The FT taking quite a different headline, Claire, saying Taiwan tensions overshadow their meeting yesterday. It went on for 3.5 hours, I'm told, but the other headline to come out of it is that there will be no new Cold War, which is, reassuring.
I was going to say, I mean, that's the positive that we have to take away from it, and I think that we are quite fortunate that that is the case. And none of us want any escalation and any more tension and wars, but I think it's always going to be a difficult relationship, and Norman's right that we have to have these conversations with states that perhaps we really wish we wouldn't. You can't ignore them, but I'm not convinced that this is going to last all that long. I think if we can prevent war, that's great. I'm not sure there'll be any motion on climate change coming out anytime soon, and we always have to be very, very wary of any kind of surveillance from China. I don't think that that's going to stop. So it's a start, and it's more positive than we've seen for a long time, but I'm not that hopeful that we'll get too much out of it.
Yeah, Taiwan will continue to be a flashpoint, won't it? Page 11 of the Mirror, Norman. Council finally puts a foot right with slippers giveaway.
What's
wrong with that?
Having said that local councils are strapped for cash in the previous hour, I have to say this strikes me as a rather bizarre story whereby in North Allerton, which by the way is in Rishi Sunak's constituency, the council in North Allerton has got something called a slipper social in the branch library, when they get old people rounded up, I guess, in some sort of shape or form, and they offer them free slippers on the basis that not any old footwear, but special anti-slip slippers. Well, that seems a contradiction in terms to me.
They're not slippers then, are they? They're anti-slip.
No, they're non-slippers.
Shoes.
Non-slippers. They have got, they're not backless, if you want the details. They've got rubber soles, which is designed to stop people falling over and slipping around.
That's good.
I'm loving the level of detail in this story.
That's a bit of fun. And to encourage them to meet and have a cup of tea and biscuits, and it's about community.
It's important about connecting and reducing the levels of isolation for people.
Yeah, no, I don't mind it. Just the idea of having anti-slippers.
Yeah, it's a bit of fun.
It's a bit weird. And just finally, page 12 of the Daily Mail, Claire, Heinz means a huge increase for ketchup as brand prices soar. Is this according to Daily Mail sources?
Oh, like nice. Nicely done.
I've done that joke before.
Have you? Surprising.
Very sad.
I think we always get these stories coming out whenever there's a cost of living crisis, and it's always the basics that we go to see how things have increased. And Heinz tomato ketchup is up by 53%. And when you start looking at, these are the staples that you put in your shopping basket, you don't particularly think twice. And now suddenly when you're looking at that kind of increase, and the same with spreadable butter and with milk, there's 35% and 38% increase. You start to look at the cost of your shopping, and I remember many, many years ago being able to do sort of £50 if I really scrimped and saved and didn't have much cash. I couldn't do that these days.
It's difficult now.
It is really, really difficult, and these are real basic things. Butter, there's nothing on here on this particular list that the Daily Mail has given us that is anything luxurious.
So just to clarify, they're calling ketchup a staple. Tomato sauce a staple.
I'm calling it a staple. I don't think they are. I wouldn't like to put that up.
You have to have ketchup.
Or HP sauce. But there's another debate.
Spreadable butter is already eye-wateringly expensive. I can't imagine how it can get more expensive. How much has that gone up by? Did you say something like 30?
That has gone up by 30%.
So you'll have to have non-spreadable butter.
Which is just
you've got to manage your butter situation.
You see, and there's the technicalities of leaving it out, putting it in the fridge. I mean, to make life more difficult for everybody.
This is terrible. Norman Baker, Claire Pizzle, we'll leave it there. We'll have more from both of them just after 8:30.